Now, we had Earl Hackett come on and show us how to do 3D printing, which a lot of people, I think, found very interesting. And now tonight, we've got Jamie going to come on and show us laser cutting. To build your own structure or your own passenger car or freight car, I assume, in any scale, Jamie's the man to show us how to do it. Jamie, most welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Okay, so first of all, what are we going to cover in this presentation? All right, what is this presentation going to be? It's going to be a brief look at what you can do with a laser, suggestions on how you can access a laser, and some encouragement to try this for yourself. What this won't show you is a step-by-step tutorial. I'm not going to try to do a step-by-step tutorial because you may be using a different drawing program than I do, and you may be using a different laser than I use. So it's not going to do me a whole lot of good to say, you know, grab this box over here and drag this over there and make this and put this in like that, because maybe your program does it differently. A little more than a year ago, when we were home from the pandemic, I said to my wife, I'm getting itchy not being able to draw things. Maybe I'm going to buy myself a program, and I'm a Mac guy, so I went online and looked. I tried a free trial for one, and I was like, there is no way I'm going to use this, because it was horrible. I really did not like it at all. And maybe that's what you're going to use and you're going to get used to, but I sure didn't like it. So anyway, so that's why I'm not going to bother with a step-by-step thing. Now I would imagine the laser, no matter what laser you use, it's all a matter of sort of settings and whatever. And if you had some questions about that, I would be certainly happy to discuss that with you. But I don't think that that's necessary for this particular show, because you got to get out there and futz with it yourself a little bit and try to see what it is that how to set up your laser. And obviously, lasers come in different powers, and the one I happen to use currently is about a 30 watt, which is fairly lightweight. So, maybe my settings are a little higher than you would need if you were running into something with a 40 watt or a 50 watt, or a 70 watt. Okay, so why would I want to do that? Well, traditionally we build kits or we scratch build, right? So, scratch building, you go out and you say, all right, I have to get all this stuff together. I have to collect all this material. I have to cut the windows and the doors if it's a building, or I have to measure the wood and cut the wood for whatever, side of the train car or whatever. So, that's one way to do it, okay? The other way to do it is, of course, you can build a kit. Now, in building a kit, especially a laser cut kit, I had a friend who used to build, he used to market a line of S-scale buildings. And for a while, he was kind of the only game in town with S-scale buildings. And his buildings were, somebody said one time that it was all the parts you needed to scratch build a building together in one spot. And, but you could change things. If you didn't want the door over there, you could move it over here. You don't want this window, you could leave it out. So because you were cutting all of those windows yourself, you could choose where to put them if you wanted to. Whereas if you're doing a kit, you're a little bit more limited. Now, obviously with a laser cut kit, you might even be more limited than you were. So the laser makes the kit easier to build, but it also gives you less options. So if you can do your own laser cutting, you can get around that. Of course, kit bashing is another thing. So that's what we're doing here. And we actually do a little bit of kit bashing. I use the laser to do a little bit of kit bashing, which I'll try to talk to you about in a little bit. Okay, so what can I cut? You can cut wood, styrene, laser board, acrylic, and paper, okay? I've cut wood up to about, I think, 1/8 of an inch thick. They talk about cutting wood thicker than that in multiple passes. The problem with thick wood, of course, is it lights itself on fire, and that's not good. I always tell people when I'm running the laser, if I have to step out of the room for a minute and somebody else is in there, I'll say, if you see smoke coming from that, just lift the lid, because that shuts off the light and then there's no more laser. You can cut styrene, again, depending on thickness. I've never cut any 005 styrene. I've done nice jobs with 010, 010, 020, 030, 05, up to 060, I think. 060, you probably want to use more than one pass. You want to run the laser over it a couple of times, cooler and faster, so that you don't get melty edges. You try to do it all at one time, you get melty edges. Acrylic, again, you can cut acrylic. You can that I've cut acrylic up to 1/4 inch thick. Laser board, as the name implies, is a product that's designed to be cut on a laser. Laser board, I bought it in 3 thicknesses. I think it's 64th, 32nd, and then something that's thicker than 32nd that I don't really know. It's certainly not a 16th, but it's a little thicker than that. I forget, maybe it's 0.3. I don't know, that'd be about 30th. I don't know. I don't remember what it is. So it's they offered a thicker piece. Somebody I knew was interested in some diaphragms for or striker plates for diaphragms for O scale passenger cars. So he wanted the thickest stuff he could get. So I obtained some of that. And then of course paper. You can always cut paper. Paper is great because it's cheaper than all those other products. And so I often cut my initial cuts in paper to see if things are going to fit. And that's a lot cheaper than cutting things in wood or styrene or acrylic, etc., because then you can sort of test the fit out and see how it works. Okay. Now, I always feel I should mention this. Never cut these things. You do not want to cut PVC. Chances are your laser will come with some kind of thing, or, if you go somewhere to use a laser, they will tell you very clearly, do not cut any PVC. I don't know why you'd want to cut PVC for modeling, but just in case. PVC is about the worst thing you can cut. The C is chlorine, and when you cut it, the heat of the laser will release the chlorine. Chlorine will not only damage you, it will also damage your laser. So it's really, really bad. You do not ever want to cut PVC. Okay. Another thing you don't want to cut is ABS. Right now, ABS, a lot of models are built from ABS. A lot of railroad models are cast in ABS. So you think, oh, hey, I've got some projects where I'd like to cut out windows and change the window arrangement on a Pullman car, say. I think, oh, I'll just whip that in the laser and cut it out. No, you don't really want to do that. So the B, again, will release something that's not particularly good for you. I don't think it's as bad as chlorine because I don't think it'll damage the laser. So if you had a good ventilation system, maybe, but I would stay away from it, right? So those are 2 things not to cut. Now, again, if I look at, I found a list of stuff online somewhere about all this other stuff. They'll say, you don't want to cut styrofoam because it melts or whatever. But some of those other ones, these are the 2 biggies. Don't cut this stuff. All right. Okay, so how do I do it? You think laser cutting might be really complex. You think, oh my gosh, I don't know how to draw with the computer. I don't know how to do it. It's really, on a basic level, it's really quite simple. You think in layers and you draw rectangles. That's it. So when you look at something, you say, okay, how many layers does that have? How would I build that up in layers? And then you start cutting those layers. And then most of those layers are made up of rectangles. So let me just show you. Here's a for instance. Some of you HO folk might recognize this as the Revell Bakery. Ancient kit's been around for forever. Well, somebody in S scale took one of these and cut it down, cut 2 walls of it, basically took a kit and sort of made a flat out of it by stacking 2 on top of each other. And then they put it up on a higher foundation, so it would sort of be S scale size. And they wanted me to cut out all of these windows. They said, go through here and cut out all these windows and file them out. And I don't remember how many windows there are, 19 or 20 of the whole thing. And then each one has 6 windows. Okay. And I thought, that is way more work than I want to do. And I thought, I could laser cut that. Now, the reason I left this window in is it had this little fan in it. And I thought, well, okay, maybe I can do these and leave the fan. I have since decided I don't care. I'm cutting the fan out. So all you got to do, get out your drawing program and make yourself some new windows. That's 10 rectangles, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then the whole thing is a rectangle. So 9 and 10. 10 rectangles, simple as you can be. Play with it in size a little bit and away you go, right? Again, think of it in layers. If I go back and look, this window, the buttons in this window look like they're 2 layers. There's sort of a thin outer edge and then there's a thicker inner edge. And so that's what I've got going here. So you put those on there and then the cross ones didn't have any, they were just a single layer and there you go. Okay. So fairly simple project. I had an HO friend who was interested in Mifflin Tower. So look at Mifflin Tower. What do you see in layers? Okay. Well, let's start with the layer that makes up the wall. Okay. So that's like a scribe siding. Okay. Step one. Then you'll notice that there's kind of like this little box around these openings. I was trying to decide if that was done with paint or that was done with, uh, a different layer of wood. But I decided to use it as a different layer. Those are actually done in paper. I actually did the outline of these in paper. So again, there's paper that not only am I testing things, I'm actually using it in the model. So what I said was, okay, let's call this siding layer a layer. Let's call this outer trim layer, the brown layer, a layer. And then let's call these four rectangles here, and however many there are on the front, 6 or 8 of them on the front, let's call those a layer. In addition, the windows, the window, the actual window inside there, like I don't know what you call it. Like, if you buy an Anderson window, you get the window, like not the hole in the building, but the actual window itself. That's also 2 layers. So what I did, again, to make those, what do they call it? A double pane. I cut an outer layer and then I glued it, or an inner layer, and I glued an outer layer on top of it. Okay. Now these guys are obviously out taking some measurements of the tower so they can make better models. But I wish I could have asked them questions about what they found out about those things and some of the windows. But anyway, so that's this little humor there. Okay, so count the layers. Again, you can sort of see each window is 2 layers. Here's my paper layer. That's the trim. Here's another paper layer under that. That's the second layer of trim. And then there's the scribe siding. So again, there's sort of 3 layers in there. Forgive me for the paint. I got to go back and sort of redo that a little bit. There were places that was a little lumpy. It's painted with craft paint and a little lumpy. So I was sanding it and I just haven't gone back to fix it up yet. So these are some Canadian National passenger cars. There's a whole series of them. I think there's 6 altogether. A friend of mine in Ontario was very hepped up to get a set of these. And of course, in S scale, another reason, why do this? Why should I go to the trouble of laser cutting these? Why don't I just go buy a kit? Well, in S scale, not everything is available. We're a little bit starved for stuff. So sometimes things that are available in other scales aren't available in S, and we either have to cajole someone else into making them or make them ourselves. So again, if you look at this one, this car, now there was a article, oh gosh, ancient model railroader, almost as old as Martin's car. I want to say 1952 issue of model railroader. This guy built this 5-car set. In addition, there's drawings for a combine, so that makes the 6th car. So he went out and bought siding and whatever and cut all these bits himself. So good for him. He made it. And for the age of those kits, he did an amazingly good job. All right. But what I did was I ran, this is actually laser board. I ran those through I actually scribed my own laser board. Again, they're just straight lines, and what you do with the laser is, again, for my program, once I draw one of them and get it in the right spot, I put another one in the right spot, I just say duplicate, 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 and it just will make lines all the way across. Okay. So there's an outer layer that's scribed. There's an inner layer that just has windows, and that's what has these inner window frames. And then there's an outer layer a final outer layer, I guess maybe the scribes again, you call the middle layer, the scribing that has the letter board and this trim around the windows. Okay, so these 2 layers are 30-seconds laser board, and then this outer trim on the window is 64th laser board. As an S scaler, laser board's great because 32nd is 2 inches and 64th is 1 inch, so that's wonderful for me. Now, there's 3 things going on here. It looks a little lumpy, some of the paint. So again, if you're looking at my modeling, all right, so there's 3 things going on here. Number 1, I wanted to see how well this scribe, this laser cut siding would show up as far as, like they really looked light when I did it. And I thought, I wonder if the paint's just going to fill it in. It's going to look flat. So it showed up fairly well. I'm pretty pleased with that. Second of all, I painted it with a spray bomb. Like Rust-Oleum or something. So I was checking, number 1, how good is the Rust-Oleum paint as it comes out of the can? And I would tell you it's pretty good. It's got, I don't know if those nicks are from the laser board or if they're from the those little lumps are from the laser board or from the paint. And then third of all, I was checking to see if the color would be okay for CP rail, and I decided that it was pretty decent. So anyway, I was having some issues with the top up here, so I had to recut that. And so I recently did that, and so that's why it doesn't match anything. I believe eventually it just gets painted black to match the roof. Here's another one. This one, a little more lumpy, you can see. But again, you can see what I did here is, okay, so we've got the inner layer of the wall, which you really can't see at all in this picture. We've got the middle layer of the wall, which has the scribe siding. We have the third layer, outer layer of the wall that's got the letterboard and this door trim. And then the door, so now this piece right here is part of the outside. Then the door on the inside is two pieces of laser board, the 64th on the outside and a 32nd on the inside. And the 32nd one just has a big hole in it, and then it has these lines scribed in it. And then the 64th piece on the outside has the windows, the individual windows. And then it has these little boxes cut out or little squares cut out of it here so you can see the scribing on the doors. And those, it's always kind of a rush to me when these things fit. When I put those two doors together, the two pieces of the door together, they fit up absolutely perfectly, and it was just so cool. So still got to go back and finish this up. Got to put some handrails on the doors and whatnot. So okay, so here is something. Now I cut for a friend of mine, I cut FW Tower. And again, I just cut the walls. If you go onto the S-Scale website, the National Association of S-Scalers, if you look at the old convention, this model won the best of show at our last convention back in 2019 in Cincinnati. And, I say I gave him the football at the 10-yard line. He ran 90 yards for the touchdown. So, I mean, I handed him walls that had laser cutting in them, and he, I windows, but he went through and put all the details on and, made it a really fabulous model. So, I mean, he did a great job. But I just kind of, he could have done what I did. It just would have taken a long time to do it. He would have had to cut it out, and he would have had to scribe all the lines. And I just turned on the laser and away it went. So anyway, I thought for fun, I would try to make an N scale one. And I haven't really gotten a lot farther with it. It's one of those 15 projects on the workbench, 15, probably more. But anyway, this is the inner, there's an outer 32nd laser board and an inner 64th laser board. And again, it's kind of cool because you can do the coloring beforehand. And again, this is just one wall. But I got this out because I wanted to show you just how small you can cut 64th, any laser board really. Okay, so those little window buttons right there, they're just give you a size. There's a penny, how big that is. And those little window buttons are 8 thousandths of an inch. So you can cut down to 8 thousandths of an inch, and the laser board is fine with that. Now you can't do that in plastic. What happens is it'll melt, right? So you try to cut plastic that small and it just melts. So that's why I had to do some other cuttings, for the laser board. So anyway, so again, nothing here but rectangles. We haven't shown you a single cut that hasn't been a rectangle. And now this is a drawing from the series of article, or the article I told you where the guy built the series of cars. He built the 5 Canadian Pacific passenger cars. Did a fabulous job. You can see all the layers he put together. And again, I just made it a lot simpler with the laser. So here's my laser. Now again, in terms of layers, this is the backing 132nd laser board, and you see the windows. Now these small transom windows are actually a separate overlay. So they were cut separately and then glued on inside the window. That's what it looked like to me. I actually stood in front of one of these cars in Montreal, and I really should have taken a better look at it, but it's a long story, so I didn't do it. So anyway, but now you'll notice, again, all of a sudden you say, hey, wait a minute, that's not a rectangle. Nope, it's got a rounded corner. It's really not that bad. So there's on my drawing program, there's a little command. You just click an arrow and you can start rounding the corners of the rectangles, and you can make things that are round. So anyway, that's that one was cut. I think yesterday I cut the inner for that, and I was pretty happy when it fit. So that's actually almost a car now. It's the sides and the sides are on the floor. So I still have to work on the ends. Jim said he thought you could cut freight cars with it, and yes, you can. So I have made a couple of Pennsylvania Railroad GD gondola cars. I cut these last year, right before we got shipped out of school for COVID. So I spent some time at home building them, and it was a nice project. Now I had a little problem with these. I was hoping you can kind of see the laser. This was the first thing I tried to cut on the inside and the outside. So again, we're getting a little fancy here. So I tried to cut them on the inside and the outside, and they didn't really line up. And I thought, well, okay, I can get away with it. But the problem is that the sides didn't really, they wanted a warp. Okay, so I couldn't put the sides there. This is a rare model because the sides are actually thinner than the actual car. These are 1/32 basswood, and the sides on this car were really more like 3 inches, and 1/32 in an S scale would be 2 inches. So they're really a little bit thinner than they should be. But they didn't want to stay straight enough. I couldn't glue them onto the base, the bottom of the car here, and get them to stay straight. So I ended up building the car around a block. So there's a block of wood in there. So, when I load it with coal, you won't know the difference. But I was hoping to have it be, like a removable coal load, not going to work. Okay. So anyway, but there are no nut bolt washers on those, but you can see it looks like a little bit, like a bigger dot there. I did actually mark the grab irons with the laser. I put a little dot in there and had the laser sort of cut a pilot hole, if you will, for the grab irons. The side stakes are not rectangles. They are trapezoidal. But again, once you figure out rectangles, it's not too big of a stretch to start adding curves or making triangular shapes rather than just square. So rectangles will get you a long way down the road, but pretty soon you start saying, hey, I can do this or I can do that. So yes, you can do freight cars with them. There's a Pennsylvania Railroad GD gondola. Okay, here's a Pine Series sleeper that I did. This one is cut in 010 styrene. It's an 010 styrene overlay on an American Models core body. So we have in S scale, we have a passenger car. We have several passenger cars, but one of these are a long time. This is a kit back from I don't know. I want to say the 80s probably. And they had a series. He came out with a series of passenger cars, and for me, I don't care what kind I get because I'm going to put new sides on it anyway. So I just cut away whatever I don't want. So I put the windows on and just cut away whatever, or there's not a hole in there already, I just cut it away a little bigger. So that's what I got. So all right. So then anyway, this was a car. This is the L&N, the Louisville, St. Louis, Chattanooga, and Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis, and the C&EI all had these cars. So anyway, it was a Pine series. And of course, if you did your homework, you'll note that it has the right trucks on there. It has an outside swing hanger truck back from my earlier presentation. So there you go. But this one was glued on, I just glued it on with, I guess I used ACC. I just ACC'd it on there. I tried using some kind of styrene cement, and it just wasn't melting the styrene on the either the car is probably ABS, so maybe it wasn't melting the ABS. So I just tried ACC, and it worked great. So that's what I got. Let's see. All right. So there's that one. Of course, now I got to go through and put in all the underbody detail on that car because, of course, it's looking rather barren. So, all right. So here I'm just showing off. All right. So a couple other things I've done. This is a Lehigh Valley whistle post. So again, maybe you HO guys have these things available to you, but we in S scale have to make our own. I had a friend who was very interested in Lehigh Valley whistle posts. And so I made them 2 styles. One's just got the whole W cut out, but the ones I like better have these little bars still in. And they just made these out of, I forget what he told me they made them out of, but they just cut them with a welding torch, and just cut them out. But some of them they cut the whole W, and some of them they put the little tabs in. And I like the one with the tabs because it's a little bit cooler. And then this is a Pennsylvania Rail whistle post. Again, I didn't have my settings up high enough. You can barely make out the W in there, but it is raised. what I did was I cut out around there, and then inside of that I burned in a little bit. So you can engrave, because I said I engraved the siding on some of those passenger cars. You can engrave as well as cut. So that's something you can do. And I've got a bunch of other stuff that I've done like that. I've even turned out a few pint glasses because we have a rotary cutter and I can make round things. So that's kind of fun. I've made some railroad themed pint glasses, which is kind of entertaining. But again, as I was saying, my goal is to tell you that you can do this. And so, once you get fancy with it, then you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. But again, this is something everyone can do, really. But you say, wait a minute, I don't have a laser. What am I going to do? I don't have $2,000. I don't have thousands of dollars to go buy a laser. What am I going to do? Or am I going to get a laser? Well, go to the Fab Lab. Now, I don't know what your Fab Lab's called. Ours is called the Fab Lab. This is run by our local community college. They have open hours, as you can see, from 9 till 4. And again, check your local community college, check your local trade school, whatever. Maybe they've got something going on there that you can use. And then you can go in there and borrow their laser. Right now, unfortunately, it costs money. So whatever your place has to be. Mine, it's $100 a month for mine. So again, you would have to decide if that was worth it to you. Now the other thing is that, and I haven't really looked into this because I'll let you know a little secret. I mean, I'm a teacher. Our school has a laser. I'm the guy who runs the laser. So if you want something laser cut at school, you come to me. And so I do most of my laser cutting. I do all of my laser cutting at school, but I am looking to retire someday, and then I'll think, well, maybe I'll go to the Fab Lab. But in addition to just laser cutters, the Fab Lab also has all kinds of other interesting things. They have a complete metal shop. We are very close to Martin Guitar. If you have ever heard of Martin Guitars, the Martin Guitar factory is about 10 miles up the road from me. And so we have a the Fab Lab has a full-on guitar making thing. You can take a class in making a guitar. So you can go there and learn to make guitars. So it's, again, maybe you don't want to do something just model railroady, you can do all kinds of other stuff. I'm kind of itching to borrow to get in there and use their machine tools because they've got some pretty serious machine tools. So that's, so it's not just that. It's not just laser cutting. Now let's see what I want to. Okay, so here's a couple of their lasers. This one, again, I was watching a woman work on this one the one day I was in there, and I forget what it is, but this one's probably the closest thing to the one I use. Back here is Big Bob, which is a beast of a laser. You can see Big Bob I'm kind of interested in trying out because Big Bob will cut metal. That is a laser that will cut through metal. And I have some projects I would like to cut through metal. So that would be that. And then they have an epilogue over here. Now this is actually, the laser I use at school is actually an epilogue laser. So this one is probably pretty close to what I'm used to. I don't know about size and watts and whatever. I didn't really ask them. But again, they've got 3 laser cutters at the Fab Lab, so you could have access. Additionally, since I have access to these or the one at school, I've never pursued this, but I believe there are people who, just like say Shapeways will do 3D printing for you. I think there are people who would do laser cutting for you if you did your own drawing. So you would ship them off a drawing and say, hey, can you cut this for me? And they would do it for a small fee. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that if it doesn't fit, then you got to pay the fee again after you make the correction. So, but again, it's just trying to show you that this is something that you could have access to, you could do, right? So that is about all I've got. So I don't know, I got to check and see how long I talked for. Let's see, stop the share. A little short, so hopefully people have some questions. Let me see what's going on. Let me read the chat here if there's anything. Let's see. Okay, so what actually is laser board? I'm sorry, I forgot to say that. I meant to say laser board is what I've heard it termed as is a paper, a resin impregnated paper product. Okay, so it's a paper product, but it's injected with resin, so it's a little sturdier than just paper. It is not completely water resistant. We found that out when we had something of a water main break last summer, I think, and the place flooded out and some of my laser board got ruined. So it is not entirely waterproof, but it's, if you got a little water on it, wouldn't hurt it.
As a note,
So-
laser board is made similar to the medium density fiber that's used in really cheap furniture and countertops. It's basically paper fiber that's squeezed under high pressure with a resin binder. So think of cheap particle board, only as thin as cardboard.
Yeah, depending on the cardboard, actually it's thinner than cardboard, but yeah, that's basically about what you got going. So it's a resin impregnated paper product. So, all right, so let's see, it's like mat board, but not, yep, okay, so a paper product, yes, it's a paper product. It's a glue is a burn, okay, right. So what issue of MR was the passenger car article? Jim, I'm gonna run and find that for you when I'm done. Okay, so I don't I want to say it was January 52, but I don't remember exactly. So I don't somebody sent me copies of the article. The guy who wants the passenger car sent me copies of the article. Okay, let's see. When COVID ends, try makerspace. Yeah, makerspaces are basically that's essentially, like I said, that's what the Fab Lab is. It's a makerspace. So yes, there's one in Troy, New York. How about that? Okay, so. All right, nicely done. Thank you. Well, thank you, Bob. That passenger car looks like a LaBelle kit. Yeah, see, but here's what happens is that in S scale, we can't just go out and buy a LaBelle kit. We have to go and make our own LaBelle kit. So yeah, I was looking at the LaBelle website and I was vastly tempted to buy some of those. And I'm like, I just don't need an O scale passenger car or even an HO passenger car, but I would build an O scale one. But yeah, an S scale, then it's fun, and I'm all for it. So yeah, if LaBelle made S scale passenger cars, I'd be in for a few. So, but yes, very much like making your own LaBelle kit. So in a way, it's a little bit like this is like taking Martin's presentation and making it new school, right? So I mean, we're building an old kit that then you can build. So, any other questions?
Jamie, if I wanted to build a freight car, what material should I use?
Well, it depends on what kind of freight car you want to build. So like if you want to build, I am currently building, much like Martin, I'm building an old S scale kit of the Southern Big John hopper. And it was built from the real car was steel and my model is wood. So I've got the sanding sealer out and I'm slapping it on, right? So if I wanted to build that car, I would probably go with styrene because styrene does a pretty good job of looking like metal. If I wanted to build a wood box car like Martin's car, I would build it out of wood or possibly the laser board, right? So that's what I would choose. So I would try to choose the material that's most closely like the material that the car itself was made out of. That would be my recommendation.
Jamie, what month did you say that magazine was?
I want to say it's January 52, but if you give me a minute, I'll run and get the.
I've got them all called up on my screen. I'm just trying to.
To clarify, there was an article in the May 1952, which I pulled up
Okay,
to get some more research. But I understand that picture we saw, I think, was from 1967 article. And I don't have the 1967 MR listing in front of me. So
the picture that showed like the exploded view.
yes,
No, it's not. That's from the other article.
that's in the 52.
What?
If it's from the Kootenai Bay article, I believe that was in 1958.
The article that I'm got, the guy's name is he's a Canadian fellow from out west. Oh gosh.
Walk?
No, it's Gib Kennedy.
Gib Kennedy, really?
Gib
It's-
Kennedy, yeah.
It's the Kettle Valley CPR Kettle Valley train he
Yep.
built.
Yep, that's
He built
exactly
it for the
what it is.
museum train and went across Canada, and I saw them. And then the article was then done for the magazine, and there's been 2 brass series of those cars made in HO,
Right, but not an S.
not an S or not an O.
So I've got the S scale ones. So plus plus there was an article, this is one of those things back in the day. I was going through my old, I said, I got these 2 giant boxes of old Railroad Craftsman model railroads. I got to get rid of these. So, but some of these articles I want, so what did I want? So I basically went through and pulled out everything that had drawings of anything that was in S scale. If they had a drawing of a car in S scale, I pulled it out. And so one of them was, I'll be darned, a CPR combine. And I thought, when am I ever going to build a CPR combine? I don't know, whatever. It's an S scale. I'm going to keep it. Well, guess what? I'm building a CPR combine. So you never know.
Yeah, I'll tell you what is worth it is I bought the CD of all the back issues, and boy, that a CD, and I just put it on my machine, and I don't have to have the magazines anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's I mean, hats off to Gib Kennedy, because that guy built beautiful models. And like I said, it's like back in, what was it? I don't know, was it 1952? Did I get that number? Then
I'm just looking at the one article now, May 52. I don't.
Yeah, May of
May
52.
1952 was by Mel Thornbar.
Oh, Mel Thornburg. Okay.
Yeah, if I
Okay.
could, I don't know if I can.
Is that passenger
Here's-
cars of the 1990 or 1900s? Is that what it is?
Don't know if you can see my screen. I've got the article up. Never mind.
Jamie, you're muted, by the way.
All right. Okay.
What page is it, Jim?
It's on the article, excuse me, I'm flipping through here. The article starts on page 10.
Okay, because I can show it to everybody. 10.
It's really cool. It's by Mel Thornburg.
Passenger cars of 1900, is that it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And on page 12, it shows the most beautiful lamination, which was, of course, done by hand rather than by laser, but it's the same principle that Jamie has been discussing. It's wonderful. Can you pop up page 12? Look at that. That was exactly 70 years ago, so get it in context.
Yeah, I'll go to this is the page 10 you were talking about.
That's where it starts, and on
Yeah.
page 12, it shows that wonderful way of laminating different layers of laser cut materials. Oh, wait a minute. He didn't have a laser cutter.
That's what made it so long to build kits back then.
Okay, so I lied. It was June of 59.
Okay, I'll find that one.
Kettle Valley, build a complete Kettle Valley passenger car.
Okay, June of 59.
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that got me into S scale back in my wayward days, I started out in HO, and I found an article in this guy, and that's what he did. He built passenger cars out of cardstock, and he would do like 3 layers of cardstock, and he would cut all the windows by hand. He said he'd sit in front of the television and just use a chisel blade X-Acto and just cut each corner, and go around, and he would just make cars, and he made hundreds of cars. So
Who was that?
that's an S scaler by the name of, gosh, what was his name? Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. He was up in the like the Boston area, Massachusetts somewhere.
The technique reminds me of the Joe Fisher cars.
Yeah. Okay. I've heard of him.
You know that name.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
Joe Fisher. Yeah, there he is. There's Gib.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think, oh gosh, what was that guy's name? Oh, that's really bad that I can't remember it.
Fisher published his technique on how he laminated up cars.
There's the drawing that I showed in the picture of.
Wow, that's
Fisher-
amazing.
You have to go back to 49 and Craftsman for
Yeah.
Fisher's articles.
Yeah, no, there's a picture of one of his cars. See, that's, you know, that's HO scale in 1959. That guy did a beautiful job.
How many X-Acto blades did you go through to try to build a car like that without a laser?
I don't know. I can't imagine that he put together all those transom windows.
That's phenomenal.